Welcome back to Outside Views, where we dive deep into the economic and political realities shaping the UK post-Brexit. Today we're discussing a massive figure that is making headlines. £44 billion. That's the potential public investment the UK may have lost since 2017 due to Brexit. Yeah, £44 billion. Let that sink in for a moment. And the staggering number comes from a report that looks at the gap in public investment since the UK left the European Investment Bank, or EIB, following the Brexit vote. For those of you unfamiliar with the EIB, it's a crucial institution that has funded a wide range of public infrastructure projects across Europe. The UK, as a member of the EU, was a major recipient of EIB funding. From 2010 to 2016, the UK received an annual average of £6.8 billion in financing from the EIB, supporting projects ranging from the Channel Tunnel to offshore wind farms. But once Brexit happened, the UK was cut off from that funding stream. So, what has the impact been here? Well, according to a year-long study, the UK has potentially lost those over £44 billion in public investment since 2017. And that's based on the assumption that the UK would have continued to receive the same level of financing from the EIB as France had it stayed in the EU. To put that in perspective, France has continued to receive significant public investment from the EIB since the Brexit vote. From 2017 to 2023, French projects averaged £8.6 billion annually in EIB funding, while the UK's replacement banks managed just £2.3 billion per year in the same period. And this comparison highlights just how wide the gap is. The replacement investment banks in the UK simply aren't on the same level as the EIB. And while they have made progress, especially in recent years, the shortfall is still enormous. So what's been happening since the UK left the EIB? Initially, the UK government set up several replacement investment banks to try to fill the void left by the EIB. One of the most significant of these is the UK Infrastructure Bank, which has recently been renamed the National Wealth Fund. In 2022, these replacement banks did manage to provide 99% more financing than the previous year, and in 23 they increased financing by another 18%. But here's the catch. Even with these increases, the amount of financing provided by the UK's replacement banks is still 58% lower than what the EIB was providing in 2016. It's clear that while progress has been made, there's still a long way to go. And former EIB President Werner Hoyer predicted that it would take the UK at least a decade to replace the EIB's level of financing. And based on current trends, that prediction seems to be right on the money. Even if the UK's replacement banks continue to grow by 20% each year, they won't surpass EIB levels of investment until 2028 at the earliest. And that's assuming everything goes perfectly. But let's take a closer look at the projects the UK's replacement banks have been financing. In 2023, over half of the projects funded by the National Wealth Fund were equity investments, which are traditionally riskier than debt investments. And this shift towards riskier projects is encouraging because it means the UK is beginning to take on more ambitious public infrastructure projects. However, the scale of these projects is still much smaller than those financed by the EIB. The EIB helped fund some of the UK's most iconic infrastructure projects, including the Elizabeth Line and the Scottish offshore wind farms. The UK's replacement banks, on the other hand, are still finding their footing and financing smaller, less risky projects. And this lack of scale has been a significant challenge. And while the National Wealth Fund has made notable strides, it remains a far cry from the level of investment that the EIB was providing. And to make matters worse, the UK government has been facing significant fiscal challenges since Brexit. The current government is attempting to navigate what many are calling a fiscal black hole. And while Labour has announced efforts to increase public investment, particularly through the National Wealth Fund, the amounts they are talking about are relatively trivial compared to what the EIB was providing. The National Wealth Fund is set to invest £7.3 billion over 5 years. That sounds like a decent amount, but when you compare it to the £44 billion that the UK has potentially lost since 2017, it's clear that this is just a drop in the bucket. And there's more. Labour's plans for public investment have already faced cuts, with more potentially coming in the October budget. And this means that even the modest £7.3 billion investment may end up being reduced further. So where does this leave us? Well, it's clear that the UK's departure from the EIB has left a significant gap in public investment. The replacement banks are making progress, but they are still a long way from filling that gap. And the impact of this shortfall is being felt across the country. From infrastructure projects to public services, the lack of investment is having a tangible effect on the UK economy. But let's go back to that £44 billion figure for a moment. This isn't just an abstract number. This is real money that could have gone towards public infrastructure, creating jobs and boosting economic growth. It's money that could have been invested in the kind of large-scale projects that the EIB used to fund. Instead, the UK is left playing catch-up, trying to build up its replacement investment banks while dealing with the economic outfall or fallout of Brexit. And the government's reset with the EU doesn't appear to include any plans for public investment. While there has been some movement on trade and security cooperation, public investment remains off the table. And even if the UK were to rejoin the EU, it wouldn't immediately lead to renewed investment via the EIB. There would be lengthy negotiations, and any new funding would likely take years to materialize. So, in the short term, it appears that the UK's public investment landscape will remain bleak. And this is a stark reminder of the long-term economic consequences of Brexit. While some hope that leaving the EU would lead to greater control over the UK's finances, the reality is that it has led to a significant loss in public investment. And unless something changes dramatically, it's a gap that will take years, if not decades, to close. In conclusion, the £44 billion in potential public investment lost since Brexit is a powerful symbol of the economic challenges facing the UK. While the government is making efforts to address this shortfall, it's clear that the road ahead is long and uncertain. And as we look to the future, it's important to remember that the decision made in 2016 continue to have a profound impact on the country today. So thank you for watching Outside Views, and as always, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned for more updates on the key issues shaping the UK's future. Until next time, and the next video is right here in the end screen.